Hi everyone. We'll be waiting 2 to 3 minutes before starting the webinar to accommodate for the rest of the folks who are in the middle of connecting. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us and thanks for being part of our community. My name is Valon Kalika and I'll be your host for today. Just a few reminders before we start. If you have issues viewing the stream at any time during this presentation and are using the web browser version of Teams, please refresh your browser. If you're using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/security-webinars. Closed captions in several languages are available during this live broadcast, and you can enable them by clicking on the CC button located just the lower right corner of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the live event Q&A window by clicking on the Ask a Question button. Be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible, and if you prefer, you can post your questions anonymously, which you can check the box right below where you enter it. We often get many questions on these webinars, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event, if the answer was not provided, or if you may have additional questions post this event, please don't hesitate to raise them on our Azure Sentinel forum at aka.ms/Azure Sentinel community. And all the links that I'm referring there have been also shared with you in the IM. If you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's also a great place to ask a question. Now, we'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars, and you can do so at aka.ms/security-webinar-feedback. I would also like to invite you to join our public community by visiting aka.ms/security-community. That's the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products, and you'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, which you can sign up at aka.ms/securityprp. You can request features, give feedback, review our product roadmaps, register for events, or just simply join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. In today's session, we have three presenters, Javier Soriano, Hisham Saad, and Sridhar Andi, and they will guide us on accelerating the Azure Sentinel deployment with all-in-one Accelerator. All three guests are program managers with our Azure Sentinel team, and without further ado, I will turn it over to them. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Velda. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks so much for joining our webinar today. Quick introduction from our side. My name is Hisham Saad. I'm a senior cybersecurity technical specialist in Microsoft, and my colleagues Sridhar Andi and Javier Serrano from Azure Sentinel program managers. Today, we will show and present how you can accelerate your Azure Sentinel deployment using what we're calling Azure Sentinel all-in-one Accelerator. But before we're going to go into details and deep dive, we'll start by giving you an overview about what are the main common challenges that we're seeing with traditional SIEM deployments, not only from a technical perspective, but also from a business side as well, and how it might impact your cost. Then we're going to go into the automation piece, how you can do automation in the cloud, how you can create your own templates using the IAC, the infrastructure as a code. And we're going to show you what are the main benefits of using infrastructure as a code. Later, we're going to go into more details about automating Azure Sentinel components. And then we're going to deep dive into the Sentinel all-in-one Accelerator, showing you the entire concept, the features, functionalities. And for sure, we're going to end up with showing you like a demo, step-by-step guide, how you'll be able to use the Azure Sentinel all-in-one Accelerator in order to expedite and accelerate your Azure Sentinel deployment. So let's get started. Let's speak about what are the common challenges first as a quick overview about what we're having or seeing with other kind of traditional or SIEM deployments. One of the key points is the time that team they're using to configure data sources and collectors. These data sources can be coming from an on-premise, from your cloud environment. So the times that has been taken to do the configuration, the setup, and maybe required to have like including a parser and a scheme in order to ensure that the data that you're looking for is actually being ingested in your SIEM. High availability, covering automatic failover, and how to ensure business continuity and information assurance during multiple factors, system failures, environmental disruptions like power outage or fire, computing, the storage that you might need to allocate and consider, sizing, performance, and redundancies. So as you can see, pretty much most of the common challenges that might be facing by other kind of SIEM from a deployment perspective is purely the time and from a technical point. But how about the business impact? As you can see here, here is the latest Forrester Total Economic Impact Study, and we are sharing with you the link here as a reference. So pretty much based on the study, that 67% of our time is being used and consumed for a deployment for a legacy or traditional SIEMs, and how Azure Sentinel can help you to save this 67% of the deployment using a set of a built-in out-of-the-box SIEM content, rules, data connectors that can help you to simplify the connection to your data sources. If you go to the next and speak about automation and the cloud, so we cover about a quick overview about what are the main challenges in terms of a deployment point of view for SIEM. Going to the automation as a cloud, and what about infrastructure as a code? So infrastructure as a code is a purely the management of your infrastructure, including networks, virtual machines, load balancer, and even your current rules and settings and configurations in a descriptive model. Using the same versioning as a DevOps teams they're using for their managing their source code. Such kind of likely the same principle that the same source code generates the binaries. Exactly the infrastructure as a code, the ISC model is used to generate the same environment every time it's being applied. So what does it really means? It means that the infrastructure that to manage it using configurations for a template or a file through the entire cycle of your data. This is exactly the same approach we took to manage the code. So the main changes that we are just made to such kind of a files or a configuration for a templates, this will be automatically rolled out to you. So imagine the concept of having an automation system using a templates or for your data structures. This can be applied automatically using an ISC, which is an infrastructure as a code. So what does it mean? It means there are a set of benefits that can help you to automate the deployment for your sources, for your rules, for your settings, configuration, or even your use cases in your SIM, which is eventually this will help you to minimize the effort and time and reduce the cost. And for sure, this will lead up to have a faster execution. And instead of doing a manual automation, spending a lot of time, having a lot of data sources that require integrations, parsing, fine-tuning, we have a template and how to automate this template that define and clearly define what are the main sources or rules or use cases in a scheme. And eventually this will end up by fastening your execution. And for course, reducing your human errors that might happen. And for any kind of a change management by adapting a new source or a new services or a new data source that might be added to your SIM. And last but not least, improving the security postures and minimizing having a security vector on a whole that might end up by adding something manually to the entire deployment. So what we covered so far is sharing with you an overview about the traditional challenges for deployment, what is the business impact, how to automate this one with the concept with the IIC infrastructure as a code, and what are the main benefits. And with that, let's get more details with our colleague Khafir about what are the main automation options.
Perfect. Thank you, Hisham, and thank you everyone for attending. Welcome. So as Hisham said, now we're going to be reviewing the different automation options that we have in Azure Sentinel. So first of all, APIs. This is the first means to automate your Sentinel deployment. We have several available. The first one and the most important one probably for our Sentinel deployments is the Security Insights API. So here you see in the screen the different endpoints that this API offers. So you might be aware of some of these components, for example, alert rules. So these are the analytic rules that we define in our workspace. So that specific endpoint will allow us to do CRUD operations on analytic rules. So create, update, and delete those analytic rules. We have also an endpoint for rule templates that allows you to get all the different templates that are built into Sentinel. So you can just analyze them and see if they are a fit for your environment. We have also actions that allow you to get playbooks that are already attached to a given analytic rule. We have bookmarks endpoint, allow you to do CRUD operations on bookmarks. These bookmarks are used in our investigations and threat hunting features within Sentinel. We have also a data connector endpoint. This allows us to do CRUD operations, so create, update, and delete, again, operations on a number of data connectors. Not all of them. You probably have seen in your Sentinel portal that we have, I think, right now around 90-something connectors. The ones that are supported out of the box from our Security Insights API are the ones that I show here in the right part of this sentence. So Azure Active Directory, Azure ATP, which is now called Microsoft Defender for Identity, Azure Security Center, AWS CloudTrail, MCAS, which is our CASB product, MDATP, which is now renamed to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Office 365, and Threat Intelligence platforms. So these are the connectors that can be automated via API with these specific endpoints. We have also the Incidents API that allows us to create, update, or delete incidents in our Sentinel instance, and also incident comments to get and create comments in those incidents. It is officially documented in the link that I showed you there. I'm going to just go there for a second so you can see a little bit how it looks like. This is our official documentation page, as I said, where you have all the different endpoints that I was talking about right now. I want to just drill down into one of them, which is the alert rules, which is probably the most common one that we see customers utilizing. And I'm going to go into the create or update specific operation, which offers you, like any other of the APIs that we have on Azure, examples, parameters that you might need, what is the syntax that you need in your bodies, what are the fields that you need, etc. Also, at the end of the article, you will have examples on sample requests that you have to do, the responses that you might expect from the Sentinel instance, etc. And another one of the APIs that we have is watch lists. So this is a part of the Azure Sentinel product that is quite new. It's right now still in public preview, but we have already an API that is available for you to use to manage those APIs, to create, update, delete those watch lists. This is not part of Security Insights. So as you can see, it's not one of these endpoints that we have in Security Insights API. It belongs to a different resource provider in Azure, which is called Operational Insights. Okay. Then besides the APIs, we have PowerShell. So we have a couple of modules that we see customers normally using. The first one is our own built and supported by Microsoft PowerShell module. It's called AC.Security Insights. So again, built and fully supported by Microsoft, by us. It was released very recently, about a month ago, on January 1st of this year. It is based on the Azure SDK for .NET, which makes that the code is precompiled and makes it very fast and performant. It is part of the official Azure or AC module. And obviously here you have the URL in our PowerShell gallery. Important to say that as it is AC.Security Insights, it only covers the different endpoints that I explained. So the endpoints that I had in the previous slide, alert rules, bookmarks, incident comments, incidents, data connectors. So those are the ones that are covered by this PowerShell module. But we also have another PowerShell module that was community developed, so it was not built by Microsoft. It's been out there in the community for some time, probably more than a year now. And one of the important things about this one is that it is not only focusing on the Security Insights API, but also goes beyond that, managing the Operational Insights API, which, as I mentioned, is being used for other things, not only for watch lists, as I just mentioned, but also for other things like our KQL functions or our hunting queries. Okay, and right there you have the URL for that community developed PowerShell module. And the third option that we have for automation is ARM templates. So most of the Azure Sentinel artifacts support deployment via ARM templates. Here you have a list of the things that we support. For example, connectors. Let me put here the pointer so I can properly point to what I want to tell you. Connectors, again, we support the deployment of these connectors via ARM templates, coming from different resource providers. So as you can see here, I put Microsoft Security Insights, Microsoft.Operational Insights, and Microsoft.Operations Management. So depending on the connector that you want to enable, you might need to use a different resource provider. Okay, some of them are enabled via the Security Insights API, the ones that I told you before, like Azure Active Directory, Azure Security Center, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, etc. All of those. There's going to be others that rely on the Operational Insights, like, for example, security events from our Windows systems, Windows Firewall, I believe, as well. And there's others that are based on solutions that we install on top of the Log Analytics workspace that are based on the Operations Management resource provider. We have also analytic rules that we can enable via templates. These are all inside the Security Insights resource provider. We have also hunting rules and support for deployment via templates with that. That's Microsoft.Operational Insights resource provider. We have workbooks. These are inside the Microsoft.Insights provider. We have playbooks under the Microsoft.Logic resource provider. And we have KQL functions, which are part of the Operational Insights resource provider. Right now, I underlined here before deployment, because for these two, for connectors and analytic rules, as of today, we don't support updating with an ARM template. We support the deployment of the specific resource, the connector or the analytic rule with an ARM template, but not yet the update support. We are expecting the analytic rule support to come out really soon, so stay tuned for that. And we have a bunch of ARM templates that I wanted to show you that we have in our official GitHub repo. So if you come to our official GitHub repo, here under Azure Sentinel, and if you go to Tools and you go to ARM templates, you would see there different folders for the different type of artifacts. So analytic rules, you will be able to see here samples for each of the different rule types: schedule, Microsoft Fusion, ML Behavior Analytics. Similar with data connectors, you'll see here samples for the different data connectors that we support. Not all of them, but we have here the ones that are most common across customers. We'll be adding more soon. And then also for hunting query, we have one specific sample. Okay, so now we're going to go one by one into each component, drilling down a little bit on how we can enable it via automation. This is just a summary of the different things that you can do on the left. So what component you want to push to your Sentinel workspace, and then the different options that we reviewed: API, PowerShell, ARM, and also I added here Terraform just for reference. So again, the component are the ones that we just talked about. I added an additional one, which is onboarding. This means installing the Sentinel solution on top of an existing log analytics workspace. Okay, so as you can see here, just for your reference, I'm not going to go into each of those. Just notice, for example, that onboarding can be done with all of the different methods. Terraform is lacking several of those options right now, but around the rest, most of the options are available. Watchlist, as I said, is pretty new. It's still in public preview. We already have API, but it's still lacking in the other ways of automation. So you have here the full reference for that. Okay, so the onboarding. How do we do the onboarding of our Sentinel workspace? So the first option is with an ARM template, as I said. Here I put an example on how you can do it. So it's the code of an additional, for an example, template. As I said, Sentinel is just a solution on top of an existing workspace, on top of a log analytics workspace. So you would use the Microsoft.Operations Management solutions, okay, and then select the Security Insight solution, which is the name of the Sentinel solution. Okay, we have here one example, the Sentinel to Go project that you might know. It's an open source project developed by one of our employees that basically deploys Sentinel with an ARM template, the same way we're going to show you with Sentinel all-in-one. Then we also have the option to onboard a workspace into Sentinel via PowerShell. For this, we have two options. Either use the new AC Monitor Log Analytics solution, CMD-led. This is part of the official AC module, or using the set AC Sentinel command-led, which is part of the AC Sentinel community-developed PowerShell module. Okay, so one example for this, we have it in the all-in-one artifact that we're going to show you today. So that uses one of these two methods in PowerShell. And then we also have the option of doing it with Terraform, as we said. And here you have an example, and right there you have a link that you'll be able to see when you get the deck that shows you how to do it with Terraform. How do you automate the connector onboarding? So, as I said, there's 90 plus connectors right now that you will see in the Sentinel portal. Here, I just wanted to capture probably the most important ones, the ones that are first-party Microsoft products, and I want to make sure that you understand what are the options, right? So here I put Azure Active Directory. This is the signing logs and audit logs from your Azure Active Directory tenant, Azure Security Center, Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, Azure ATP, which is the new Microsoft Defender for Identity, MCAS, MDATP, which is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Office 365, Threat Intelligence Platforms, and Threat Intelligence Taxi. So as you can see, API is the only one that is able to do all of this seamlessly, right? The AC module, here instead of putting Security Insights, I wanted to make sure that we cover the whole Azure module. So with that, you can do pretty much everything except the TI Taxi connector. AC Sentinel, the community developed PowerShell module, has support only for 3 of these: ASC, Office 365, and TI Taxi Threat Intelligence. And ARM is also able to do pretty much all of them except TI Taxi Threat Intelligence feeds. Important, as I said, this is just a subset of the connectors. There's other connectors that are based on OMS solutions, like, for example, security events, syslog, DNS analytics, Windows firewall, etc., that can be also done via API, ARM, or PowerShell using the Microsoft Operations Management resource provider. Okay, we have some examples for this actually within the all-in-one artifact that you will see today. We have also other connectors that are based on diagnostic settings of the Azure resource. So, for example, Azure Activity, Azure WAF, our Azure Firewall, Azure DDoS. So these all are based just on diagnostic settings that you enable on a specific Azure resource. Again, this can be also done via API, ARM, or PowerShell using the Microsoft.Insights diagnostic settings endpoint. I also wanted to mention in the last bullet here in the slide that most of the new connectors that we are adding into the Azure Sentinel platform are based on Azure functions. Okay, so it's basically a function that is deployed within your Azure environment and that will actually go to the API of the third-party vendor, the third-party appliance, for example, pull the logs from that appliance, and then send them into Log Analytics or into Sentinel. So these connectors that are newer and are based on Azure functions, those can also be automated through ARM templates. Analytic rules automation options. So one of them obviously is AC Sentinel, the PowerShell community developed PowerShell module that we mentioned before. It supports all the different rule types as you see in the screen, the schedule rules, Microsoft rules, Fusion rules, and machine learning behavior analytic rules. It has one command that is pretty interesting, which is called import AC Sentinel rule, which allows you to just import the rules that you have defined in a JSON or YAML file. We have another CMDlet in this PowerShell module, which is called a new AC Sentinel rule that supports actually not only defining your rule with all of the newer features like the grouping mechanisms, etc., but also supports attaching a playbook in the single command. Then we have another automation option for analytic rules, which is our own PowerShell module, AC.Security Insights. As of today, it supports schedule, Microsoft rules, and Fusion rules. It doesn't support machine learning's behavior analytics just yet, but it will be added very soon. And also, we're working on adding samples and functions to simplify operations for users. And those are being posted in our official repo as well, and their tools. And also, of course, we can automate the deployment of analytic rules via ARM templates. But as I said before, deployment only for now. The update support will come in a few weeks. So we're hoping it will be within the February month. Here you have on the right an example of an ARM template for an analytic rule. And then hunting queries. So hunting queries are just at the end Log Analytics safe searches. Okay, so they are under the Operational Insights provider. You can create them with the PowerShell AC module, the Azure module, the official Microsoft module, using Operational Insights provider, obviously. There's two commandlets that you should know about, which is the new AC Operational Insights safe search. And also this is to create a new one, obviously. And then the set AC Operational Insights safe search. This one is to update an existing safe search, an existing hunting query. The update operation needs to have a parameter that is called etag, and you have to set that etag to an asterisk. Okay, so this is just so you know that you are modifying an existing object. Okay, so again, it will ask you for an etag. Just use an asterisk for that etag value, and you'll be able to update that hunting query. If you want your queries to your safe searches to appear under hunting queries in Sentinel, you have to make sure that the category that you use, it's hunting queries. If you use this category type, so you will see that this command requires you to add a category, make sure that it's hunting queries. AC Sentinel also supports adding hunting queries, and it has a couple of CMDlets for this. The first one just to create a new hunting rule, new AC Sentinel hunting rule, and another one to import existing rules defined in a JSON or YAML file. Okay. ARM support is also there for hunting queries, deployment, and updates via the Microsoft Operational Insights provider. And there's some samples in the link that I put in here. Same thing for updates, you need to put the etag to asterisk. Other components, other artifacts, watchlist, as I said, API in public preview that you can use. KQL functions, this is also something that many customers and partners are using. So it's a way to basically create an alias for a specific bigger or more complex KQL query that you want to abstract complexity from. So KQL functions are just another type of safe search. Okay, so you can use the same kind of automations that we saw in the last slide to use your hunting, to create your hunting queries and manage them. Workbooks and playbooks, as I mentioned at the beginning, they are native ARM resources. So you can use perfectly fine any ARM templates to create this. And one thing that is important to notice about playbooks is that even though you can automate the deployment of those playbooks, there's going to be a specific component called API connections that might need manual authorization. So you might deploy that playbook resource. You will see that there's some API connections created as part of that. So you'll have to make sure that you have those authorized for that playbook to work. Okay, so let's talk about the Azure Sentinel all-in-one artifact. So what is the purpose of this? And first of all, here you have the link that you can use to access the project in our official GitHub, aka.ms Sentinel all-in-one all together. The purpose is to speed up the deployment and the initial configuration tasks of your Azure Sentinel environment. So as Hisham mentioned in the beginning, and as I mentioned in the last few slides talking about automation, in the cloud, we have all these options to define how do we want our infrastructure to look like, just in a file, right? So that's exactly what we're doing with this project. It's ideal for proof of concept. So if you want to have your Sentinel environment up and running in just a couple of minutes, you can use this artifact to set it very fast, and you will be ready to go. And also, in case, for example, you need a highly privileged user in order to enable some connectors, like there's some connectors that require a security admin or a global admin in your organization, instead of having to give step-by-step instructions that take a long time or doing over a remote session or whatever, you can just hand over this script or this template to that user that has high privilege, and then he or she will be able to just deploy very easily. We have produced two versions of this artifact, of this project, ARM template and PowerShell based, a PowerShell script. So two versions to choose from, and we'll talk about the difference now. What does it do, this project? So first of all, it creates a resource group. It creates also a log analytics workspace if you need to. It installs the Azure Sentinel solution on top of that workspace. Then it enables also the selected data connectors from the list. Here I have two paragraphs outlining the different connectors that are supported in the Sentinel all-in-one project. You will see most of the Microsoft first-party ones and some other typical connectors that we normally enable. The ones that I have with an asterisk means that they are only available in one of the two, in the PowerShell or the ARM template version. In the next slide, I'll talk about that more in detail. It also enables rules, the different analytic rules that you might want to enable in your Sentinel environment. It enables the Fusion rule. It enables the Microsoft first-party products, the rules for those first-party products. It enables also machine learning behavioral analytics for RDP or SSH, if those connectors are enabled, of course. And also it enables schedule analytic rules that apply to any of the enabled connectors. Okay, we'll show you that in a demo in a second. So what are the requirements and costs that we have associated with all these different things that we are enabling automatically, right? You want to make sure that you're not incurring any additional cost. So here we have a list of the things that you need to enable in terms of permissions and licenses, and also the cost in the far right column. So again, for each different connector, you will find here if you require a license. As you see, for some of them, you don't require anything in terms of license. For some of them, you do. Like, for example, for Azure Security Center connector, you might need the Azure Security Center Standard or the Azure Defender, as we call it now. For some other products, like, for example, Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, you need to have that feature, obviously. So that requires Azure Active Directory Premium 2. For Microsoft Cloud App Security, you require an MCAS license, same for ATP, same for NBATP. And for most of the different first-party connectors, as you can see, the ones that are based on Azure Active Directory, they all require either global admin permission or security admin permission. So make sure that you have a user that has these permissions in order to enable those. Okay. As you can see also here, most of these are free of charge. Some of them are built, Azure Active Directory and the ones here at the bottom. Here I have a special note for the MCAS connector. This one has two components. One is just the alerts that are coming from MCAS. That is completely free of charge. But there is also an additional option, which is called MCAS Discovery Logs. These are built, okay? Within the connector itself, you can choose if you want. Within the deployment wizard, you can choose if you want or not to enable those. One thing that I didn't mention, obviously, the first asterisk is that the minimum permission that you need to enable a connector is that you need read and write permissions to the workspace in order to enable it, obviously. The two versions, what are the difference between those? So they're fundamentally the same, but they have some differences. And I put in green what is specific to each version, right? So we have the PowerShell version and the ARM template version. So Azure Active Directory, so the ability to bring sign-in and audit logs from Azure Active Directory is unique to the PowerShell version, the same as the Threat Intelligence Platform connector, okay? On the other hand, in the ARM template connector, you have security events, DNS logs, syslog, Windows Firewall, and also all the different alert rule types, Fusion, ML behavior analytics, and schedule rules. Okay, so these are the main differences that we see between the two. So I wanted to have a slide that explains a little bit the process on how the ARM template works, right? It's a little bit complex, so I want to make sure that you will understand, and so you can verify that it's working properly in your environment. So first of all, there's one template that is the one that kicks off everything, which is called Azure Deploy.json. That one is responsible for creating the workspace, the log analytics workspace, and also enabling the security insights solution on top of it, the Sentinel solution. That main template will call what we call a linked template, which is called data connectors.json. That template will enable all the different data connectors that we request. Okay, so it can be our first-party connectors, it can be security events, it can be Windows Firewall, whatever it is, this template will take care of. Then the main template also calls this other one, alert rules.json. This one will enable analytic rules, but in this step, it will only enable these three: Fusion, Microsoft alert rules, and also ML behavior analytics. And in the last step, if we have selected to enable schedule rules, it will call another template, which is called schedule alerts.json. This one will need to do some additional steps, and I'll explain why. First of all, it needs to create an user-assigned identity. This is an identity that we're going to use to query the Sentinel API and obtain some things. Specifically, we're going to be gathering the different analytic rule templates that we want to enable later. Then there's a need for a deployment script that sleeps for 2 minutes. This is a script that is launched from within the template, okay? And we need to sleep 2 minutes because the user-assigned identity needs to be ready for us to work with it, and that has a delay. It's probably around 1 minute, but just to make sure, we have here 2 minutes of delay, okay? When that user-assigned identity is ready, we grant the contributor role to that identity at the resource group scope. So the resource group where we just deployed all these things, we provide contributor role to that user-assigned identity. And then what we do is we call another deployment script. This is a script that uses the Sentinel API, the Security Insight API, to fetch the alert rules, the alert rule templates that we need to enable. Why? Because we want to enable only the schedule rules that apply to the connectors that we have selected. So if we have selected only the Office 365 connector, we will only enable schedule rules that have that Office 365 connector requirement. Okay, all the other ones that don't have Office 365 connector, we will not enable because we don't need them really. They will be useless in our environment, right? And at the end, with the output from this script, we will just create the appropriate schedule alert rules. Okay, so let me show you a demo of this. This is a video because it takes a little bit long. It takes around 5-7 minutes. So I'll record a video. So this is the PowerShell, sorry, the GitHub repo where we have the different versions. You saw this table already in the slides with the licenses, permissions, and cost requirements, etc. We have the different things that we need to do for that. And then we have the button that allows us to deploy. So let's click on that. This will take us obviously to the Azure portal where we select our resource group where we want to deploy. Sentinel all-in-one resource group. Then we select the region, the workspace name that we want to give to that Sentinel environment, all-in-one demo workspace. Then we can set the daily ingestion limit in gigabytes. So this is a feature in Logalytics that not many people know. The only thing is that it doesn't apply to some tables, the one that you have right there. And you should worry about these two specifically, security events and Windows Firewall. These don't apply the limit, okay? Then we can also set the number of days of retention, 90, which is the default, and then we click next. Here we select what connectors we want to onboard. As you can see, you have a long list to choose from, Office, Azure services, etc. So we'll select several of them. But then for some of them, you will have to select additional options. In this case, do you want MCAS discovery logs, yes or no? In this case, you want security events, but what level you want? All, common, minimal, we'll select all in this case, and then the rest of the connectors. We select all of them in this case. And here now we select the rules. What rules do you want to enable? Fusion rules, Microsoft Firewall rules for selected connectors only, behavioral analytics rules also for selected connectors, either if you have security events or syslog, they will be enabled yes or no. And then a schedule, again, only for selected connectors that you have selected in the previous screen. Then we click next. This will run the final validation of the template and make sure that we have chosen the right things. And then we just click create. So this will start the deployment of the different components of the solution. So the first thing that we'll see is our workspace that it takes just a few seconds to create. By the way, if you don't choose the schedule rules part, it will take very, very little time, like less than a minute to complete. Here we'll see that it has already done in lifetime. It had installed the solution already, the security install solution, and it's already creating the alerts and the data connectors. We go first to alerts. We will see that probably has already finished. Yes, it has already finished. In here, we see that all the alerts have been enabled. They are all alert rules, type alert rules. And then we see the names of the alerts that have been created, Office, AADPTP, etc. And then we also see the data connectors, which is already finished already. It takes less than a minute, as I said. And you see that there's different types, data connectors, solutions, data sources. So that depends on the type of connector that we have. And here we see all of them have been successfully enabled. Okay. Then we have the last step, which is the enable schedule alerts. This one is the one that we had to speed up. The rest it was real time. This one we have to speed up because, as I said, there is this sleep button after the user assigned identities are created. There is this sleep script that sleeps for 2 minutes to make sure that the user assigned identity is ready to be used. So we have to speed that up. And then when that's completed, we see that the role assignment has already happened right there. So assigning a contributor role. And then we have the PowerShell deployment script that will actually talk to the API and enable the specific rules. Here we see the different, the workspace that we saw, the different solutions that we enable, security insights, Windows Firewall. We see also the user assigned identity and also the 2 scripts that were executed. Now we jump into the workspace itself that we have deployed. That's the first one. And then we go to data connectors first. And we see already that we should see our 9 connectors have been already deployed and onboarded. Yeah, we see right there one of them. Azure activity, it will not show in green because it takes a little bit until the data starts coming in. But if you go and analyze further, you'll see that it's already connected. So it will start flowing in soon. It's just that it's not shown in green in the UI. Azure Defender as well is there. DNS. The different Microsoft first party, MCAS, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, Office 365, security events, etc., etc. And the last one is syslog and also Windows Firewall. And then the analytic rules will also be able to see the ones that have been enabled. Microsoft security rules, Fusion, schedule rules. And lastly, we will see at the end that we also have the the machine learning behavior analytics rules somewhere over there, right there. Okay, so you see in just a few seconds, you are able to have your full environment of Sentinel ready to go. So Sridhar, if you want to talk now about the PowerShell version.
Yes, Xavier. Thanks, Xavier. So so far we covered the ARM template version of all-in-one Sentinel collector. Now I would like to cover the PowerShell version, and this PowerShell version needs a core PowerShell needs to be installed on your system, and it uses our official Azure Security Insights PowerShell module. And in order to use your PowerShell, in order to use this all-in-one Sentinel connector, you need to authenticate with Azure user with the appropriate permissions. And the code it works on the existing resource group, and as well as it create a resource group and it create a workspace and install a Azure Sentinel solution on top of it, and it will create all the connectors. And in order to define whatever the data connectors you need to create using the PowerShell script, okay, we need a JSON file to capture the connectors that we need to enable. Now I will go and give you demo on the PowerShell demo. I am sharing my screen. So this is our all-in-one Azure Sentinel all-in-one accelerator, and these are all the PowerShell instructions, and these are all the data connectors we are enabling using our PowerShell version. And as I mentioned, we have a connectors JSON file, and in this connectors JSON file, I'm enabling all these data connectors like Azure Activity Log, Azure Security Center, and these are all the data connectors I defined in the connectors JSON. And just once you come to here in Sentinel all-in-one PowerShell script, just run the PowerShell script, and it will ask me the resource group name. As I mentioned, I am currently working on existing resource group and existing workspace in order to save some time. The PowerShell script also works in the same manner if you don't have a resource group or a workspace. So I am using my existing resource group, and I am using my 1 minute the workspace. I just want to just a minute. I am using an existing workspace here. Okay, I got it. Okay, it's 3 Sentinel-LA, and it's under East US 2. When I click enter, okay, it will ask me to authenticate myself. So I am authenticating myself using my build tenant. So now I am authenticated successfully, and the code is executing. The first message we are getting here is resource group Sentinel already existing. I'm not creating it, and workspace already existing. It's not creating, and Sentinel is already installed. So it's going ahead and creating all the data connectors that we are defined in connectors.json. So yeah, this is see, all the data connectors are enabled, and you can go. I can go ahead and see my data connectors here in my Azure Sentinel. This is my workspace. Under workspace, these are my data connectors. And if you see, if I want to see only connected data connectors, okay, all these data connectors I just enabled using the PowerShell script. So it runs very fast. If in order to accelerate your POCs, this all-in-one accelerator will come very handy to enable all the data connectors in a single stretch. And if you don't want, and we are also providing a delete connectors.PowerShell script also. You can also execute, if you want to delete the existing connected data connectors. Yeah, that's all from my side. Back to Javier.
Yes, let me share my screen again. Thank you. So yeah, so with that, we wanted to also leave you with some resources to get started today. So first of all, go and visit the Sentinel All-in-One project. As I said, aka.ms Sentinel All-in-One, and you'll be able to use that. We also have here a link for the report that Hisham showed at the beginning, the Total Economic Impact Study from Forrester for Azure Sentinel. We also wanted to provide you another resource that many customers are using to speed up the Sentinel deployment, which is the Azure DevOps boards template. You have the link right there to our blog post on that. We also have a link to the Azure Sentinel official blog, which is a very good resource to stay up to date on everything Sentinel, and obviously our Azure Sentinel documentation for you to drill deeper into the different topics. And with that, we wanted to open it up for question and answers. So if you have any, I've seen that there's many questions in the chat. So we're trying to answer those as they come. If you have any new ones now, please, it's the moment to ask.
Thank you, gentlemen. And before we, although the team is handling the question here, but we'll see if there's anything outstanding or new ones. I do want to address the question that came early in the call, and there was some. It was about the Azure workbooks limitations and perhaps Azure dashboard lacking on some functionality. This is great feedback, and this is exactly what we would like to hear from you. Since you haven't had a chance to elaborate further on that, we would appreciate if you can reach to us, and you can do so by going to our tech community. In Azure Sentinel Tech Community, link is aka.ms/Azure Sentinel Community, and we would love to help you with that. So let's just see if there's anything that we missed. I see some new ones coming in. Just a second.
I saw one interesting one. Yeah, well, sorry. I wanted to just mention one in particular that came up a few seconds ago, which is on the connector table that I showed, where it said that the cost is none. They're asking me, does it mean that the consumption is free? Correct. It means that the consumption is free. So for those connectors that I mentioned in that slide, I can put it up now if you want. There's no cost for those connectors. Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. And here's one. How do you close MCAS alerts after resolving them in Sentinel?
Okay, that's a good question. So we have already a feature in private preview in Sentinel that allows you to have bidirectional synchronization between incidents that are opened up in our Microsoft Threat Protection portal, Microsoft 365 Defender, and Sentinel. So again, any incident that is closed, for example, in Sentinel, will be automatically closed in Microsoft 365 Defender portal, and vice versa.
Thank you. There's a question on the advantages using Graph Connector versus Event Hub.
I'm not sure about the context of that specific question. If you can elaborate a little bit about that one, that'd be great.
Sure, and we'll get back to that one if it comes. How would you recommend we generate reports for customers from Sentinel?
Okay, that's a good question. So we have, as you probably know, our workbooks service within Sentinel, which allows you to build dynamic dashboards. We have many out of the box right there for you to choose from. There's, for example, some of them that tell you about the incidents that have been happening in your workspace. So that's a typical one, for example, that you could send to your customer. That tell you how many incidents have you solved in the last few weeks, what was the severity of the incidents, a summary of where those incidents happen around the world. So that's the typical thing that you would share. That one specifically is called SOC efficiency. So if you go to your Sentinel instance and look for a workbook template called SOC efficiency, you will be able to find that one.
Okay, Thank you. And there's one asking on how to provide the high availability for OMG gateway and syslog connector. I think actually Tiander is about to reply on that one. So if you want to speak to that, Tiander.
Yeah, so two options. So the log analytics gateway, which used to be the OMS gateway, is NLB aware, network load balancing aware. And if you want to scale out on syslog collectors, you could also use VMF scale sets. We have a blog post on it. I'll paste that in later.
Thank you, Tiander. And of course, we can't avoid the price-related questions. There's few of them, but here's a good one. When you say the cost associated to the connector is free, I still have a cost associated to the Azure Sentinel itself. So he's questioning that. Is that right?
Yeah. So Sentinel is charged on two things. One is ingested data, so the amount of data that you ingest into the workspace, and also the retention. If you keep the data for longer than 3 months, then it will be charged at a specific rate per gigabyte per month, right? But the ingestion part, the ingestion cost of the equation, it's free for some sources, as I mentioned in that slide before in the call, right? For example, Office 365 events, those are free. Azure Activity, those are free. All the different alerts from Microsoft security products, those are free. Okay, so for those you won't pay anything on ingestion. Okay, so if you, for example, if you only ingest those free sources, and then you don't keep them for longer than 90 days, Sentinel will be free for you.
Great to know that. And here's the last one that we'll take. What is the preferred way to stream or export incidents with enrichment information to other on-prem SIEM?
Okay, that's a good one. So we have, I think, a couple of blog posts around that for other SIEMs. We can try to pick them up right now and put them in the chat. Yeah.
We'll do that. Okay, so just some quick reminders. We'll be hosting a few more webinars on this month, and there's many more to come in the pipeline. So please follow us on our registration site. The landing page for that one is the aka.ms/security webinars. And in case we missed to answer, as I mentioned earlier, your questions, or if you may have additional questions, please visit us in our Azure Sentinel forum at aka.ms/Azure Sentinel community. And I would like to close this webinar by thanking Javier, Hisham, and Sridhar for an excellent presentation. And also thank you for tackling all these questions, as well as to the team behind who's been very helpful on answering most of the questions. So thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars, and we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.